very distinguished panel. We'll do a quick bio, and then, of course, we talk about all things AI for about half an hour. So please, if you would just give us a quick intro. Let's just go from you, Carole.
I'm Carole House. I'm a senior fellow at the Atlantic Council. I spent 2 tours at the National Security Council under President Biden and used to be at FinCEN, the AML regulator running crypto policy.
I'm Dino Dell'Accio. I'm the Chief Information Officer of the United Nations Pension Fund. Been with the United Nations for 25 years, and most of my career was in IT auditing. And in 2017, I was appointed CIO of the UN Pension Fund.
Hey everybody, my name is Fred. I'm a contributor to Cardano, and we are the world's largest DAO with about 7 million citizens.
Excellent, thank you. So where do we go from here with AI? First, let's level set, kind of set the basis, if you will. And I would like to ask all of you, what is going well in AI and what is not going well? If you could, again, just give us a perspective and be very opinionated.
Me? Okay. So just a little bit of a background, very briefly. In 2017, when I was appointed CIO of the United Nations Pension Fund, I was asked to address an historical problem that the UN had vis-à-vis the fact that the UN Pension Fund has 80,000 retirees and beneficiaries living in more than 192 countries. And for 70 years, the UN Pension Fund had a big challenge, which was about confirming that these 80,000 people receiving emolument every month are still alive. For 70 years, this was done by mailing through 192 postal services a piece of paper, a form, asking them to sign it and return it back to the same 192 postal services. As you can appreciate, this was often subject to heavy questioning from the governing bodies, from the oversight bodies, asking the UN Pension Fund to confirm that there was no fraud. Of course, proving a negative was impossible. And therefore, what I tried to do, as being a former auditor and being obsessed with corroborating evidence, I tried to create a system that was based on a positive verification and proof. So I designed a solution, a digital identity solution, based on biometrics, facial recognition for authentication and proof of life, blockchain to create an immutable general ledger of all the transactions, and then later on, I added artificial intelligence when deepfakes became a real threat. So to answer the question, what goes well with AI? In our case, we basically decided to fight AI with AI. By embedding an AI module in our biometric algorithm, we are able to prevent and detect potential deepfakes. What does not go well is the fact that we do not have yet adequate capability and skills, and also we don't have yet that agility to integrate AI technologies with other systems, being legacy system or being, in my case, blockchain. There is also a component of geolocalization and so forth. So I think these are the 2 domains in which we are trying to work. And I'm proud to say that one of my biggest efforts, again, being an obsessed former auditor, was to provide security and demonstration that our use of AI was responsible and was ethical. So we are the first United Nations entity within the system to have achieved the ISO 42001 certification on the responsible and ethical use of AI. Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Well, anything that Dino is doing is going well in AI, of course. There's been massive amount of experimentation. We've had 2 administrations back-to-back that have prioritized AI with a lot of overlap in how they're doing it, and some very important distinctions and difference, maybe with President Biden focusing a lot more on security, vulnerability management and mitigation and governance issues, and then this administration focusing a bit less on that, in fact, rescinding some of the orders and actions that were underway, focusing on AI safety, but focusing and promoting a lot more on things like investment in the innovation arm and trying to ensure that American companies are, that we continue to maintain leadership in AI. So a lot of focus, a lot of investment that's going on, incredible experimentation, focus on things like cybersecurity, compliance enhancements, just the capabilities that you get from advanced pattern recognition to just the capabilities to improve your speed and cost efficiencies to conduct really boring tasks that can now be automated. A lot of goodness is happening. But I was at the NSC, and we're good at worst case scenarios. So let's talk about what's not going well. A lot of things are not going well. Basically, some of the things, the innovations that we talked about, the amazing models that can allow you the protein models that can allow you to speed up your ability to create new vaccines, the capabilities to create new software and detect vulnerabilities can potentially be used to create malware. Those protein models for vaccines could be used to generate bioweapons. Like, as a former chemical officer in the Army, this is like really scary. And then certainly fraud. We have not built in place the building blocks that we need for security and to address the authenticity crisis that we're currently presented with is not positioned and fit for purpose to address this amazing technology that can allow for scalability, and where we're making a lot of the same mistakes that we did with the internet and not building in some of those key tools that we need for security and privacy on the front end.
Very well said. Thank you, Carole. Frederik, over to you.
Well, from my point of view, there's a lot of things that doesn't go well with AI. And one of them is that we are trying to over-regulate it in a global, we live in a global world, right? So if you have really large powers who says we don't regulate it, and then you have others who does regulate it, you have an asymmetric governance relationship. And I think what you really should think about from the start is not about how do I have amazing AI models or large language models, and then, how do I figure out compliance? You should figure out compliance first, and then do the other part. And there we can take a lot of the learnings, what Dino was speaking about how do we use blockchain as a collaboration tool, but also as a security tool for some of those models. And I think that part is definitely not going as fast as anybody wants, because as somebody said earlier here today, blockchain is boring and lazy, right? And that is true, right? It's not as exciting as AI is. AI gives you this instant gratification. Everybody suddenly can do ChatGPT and get some value. But you actually have no idea if the answer is correct. So we are potentially going to live in a society where we are much more skewed toward dependency on technology and less humans involvement and less sort of physical contact, right? And therefore, I think what we really need to do right now is we need to look at that convergence between, digital identity, very, very strong digital identity based on distributed, decentralized networks like Cardano and others. And then you have to look at verified credentials. So if the AI is who it is, great. How do I then know that it actually does what it's supposed to do and have the data, and the training data was unbiased and not, like internet data, but was really valuable, qualified data, right? Those kind of things. Really, really important. And how do I ensure that not one company takes the whole market, but we can actually keep value and economic opportunities in the communities where people work with people and can get benefits from AI instead of everything becomes one company controls it all in one database. And there is only two databases. There's databases who have been hacked and databases who will be hacked, right? So if you have AI based on 200 databases, that's a lot better than one.
Very well said again. Thank you. Thank you, Frederik. Just to shift gears, AI, there is a ton of buzzwords. There is no lack of buzzwords in AI. If you could just quickly tell us a buzzword you like and a buzzword you hate. And Carole, maybe you go first.
One that I like is digital identity, which gets talked about a lot, and people don't necessarily really understand what goes into it. These two really do. They do a lot of work specifically in this space. I love it. It needs to be invested in. It absolutely is the it's the cornerstone of the future of digital economies. We need to get that right. One that I really don't like, I don't know, sometimes, I don't know if I have a great one. Agentic AI, I think it's an important buzzword, but I do think that sometimes people are focusing so much on what the potential reality is of really, really sophisticated AI that is important, and that is something that we need to address. There's a lot of work that needs to happen right now for even less sophisticated applications and models that we need in order to get that right.
That's right. Thank you. Thank you. Dino, over to you, sir.
Well, I don't know what is a buzzword. It's just that the second part of the term, artificial intelligence. So the part about intelligence is something that gets me, because as we all know, it's not intelligent at all. It's great statistical tool that does certain thing in a very fast way. So that's the part that for me.
So you don't like the intelligence?
Exactly.
Thank you. Frederik, over to you, sir.
I was thinking about exactly the same. I don't like the I. That's really a big buzzword. Actually, one thing I'm really, really excited about, just to be a bit controversial, is agentic AI. And we actually have some agentic AI, which is live on Cardano, right? And I'm really excited about seeing how it delegates tasks across different corporate identities without actually sharing personal identifying information, using identity and verified credentials in a marketplace fashion. And I think this could be one of the ways where we can get global technology to work together across nation states, also to fight global crime and things like that. So I am much more positive on agentic AI than I am on large language models, because the current large language models we have today is so hard to verify because the training data tends to be the internet. So I'm really excited about agentic AI in distributed, decentralized marketplaces.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair, and honestly, I was clearly struggling to answer his question, but I think, and I guess my concern there is, I think it's super cool, and it's a super cool vision. It reminds me of a lot of the vision that's presented about the future of Web3, but my fears are that some of the potential of agentic AI and this concept of automating massive tasks with minimal human intervention, when we've not, like, I'm not seeing the kind of investment in some of the building blocks that you talked about, like digital identity and AI vulnerability management and security. Like when all those AI researchers signed that letter saying, oh, we should pause development of AI, like right after ChatGPT launched, and I'm sure a lot of those people are eating those words. While I appreciate that, I think most of the people that signed that came at it from a positive state, the reality was that's completely impractical and was never going to happen. And if those people, including the richest man in the world, had stated that instead of a 6-month pause, we should do a 6-month investment in the building blocks for security and content authenticity that we were going to need to address some of the governance issues of that I think agentic AI is going to present. I think that would have been so impactful. So I'm much more curious about the building blocks and how we get those right.
Yeah, so let's talk about that for a second, right? So we have a problem of incentives. And when I heard some of the previous panels here with some really, really intelligent people sitting and discussing, AML, KYC, and anti-money laundering, where what they observe on the blockchain is a huge issue, right? I'm like, well, that's not a huge issue. That's immaterial from an auditor's perspective when you look at what's actually happening out there. And in general around blockchain and the investments we've seen around blockchain, specifically the last 3-4 years, has been on short-term economic gratification and not on long-term building blocks. And when we see presidents and launching meme coins and people accepting that as a standard, I get really worried, because what we are not doing is we're not safeguarding humanity. We're not creating a collaborative space where everybody gets more GDP, more growth, more security. What we're actually doing is we are short-term optimizing for economic gain. And that goes across the sort of the cycles we've seen in blockchain, where there's been focus on NFTs and meme coins. And the hard issues, every time it gets hard on blockchain, what do? We centralize, right? And I think, so I really truly agree with you, and I think, we are a bit to blame here. We have to think more long-term. We need to put corporate governance processes in place where people like Dino and others can sit in a job, in a function, where they know that in the next 3, 4, 5, 10 years, they can keep building towards a larger strategic vision and not something where you have to defend your job tomorrow.
Very well, sir. Thank you. Let's shift gears again. And by the way, if it wasn't clear, we threw the questions away. We're just riffing at this point. So you're all very accomplished leaders in multiple domains for a very long time. If I could ask you, how is AI changing your leadership style? How do you think about leadership in the era of AI?
So it's really funny, right? So the Cardano Foundation, we're about 110 people. 60% is hardcore engineers. And my legal team was the first to implement a large language model, which was trained only on qualified data for our internal policy landscape. And I still don't understand how that happens. I have some of the best engineers in the world, and then it's my lawyers who implements that. So I think the epiphany moment for me is that suddenly some of this really hard technology becomes available to a lot more people. And what's really interesting is that suddenly business and real problems becomes the focus again. Where before it was more academia and this is a hard problem to solve and let's try and solve it. But suddenly the availability of technology, specifically AI, has changed sort of the landscape of who can actually do something.
Very well said. Dino, yes?
Yeah, so from my perspective, it's not really AI in itself. It's just the latest and newest technology. Next year, probably we're going to be here talking about quantum. The point is that whatever is the technology, it's incumbent upon us to demonstrate that we are using it in a trustworthy manner. And again, I was listening to the previous session, the concept of standardization, the concept of risk management. And the reality is here that when you're dealing with emerging technologies, you're dealing with emerging standards. So when I look back at my leadership style is, for 25 years, I always been in a position to go in front of a board. And my board is composed by the representative of 193 countries. And they expect accountability. They expect that the USA, that not only you will be innovative, and of course you did it in an economical way, but they want a demonstration, a proof that you have done it in a trustworthy manner, in a credible manner, in a safe manner. And that's, I think, the challenge, that it's easy to adopt the technology, but it's a different thing to demonstrate that the use and the adoption of that technology has been done in a safe way when there are no generally accepted standards like you have in accounting, when you have in financial reporting, that you can benchmark it, you can have a certified financial statement. In blockchain, we don't have an ISO certifiable standard. And that's the challenge.
Thank you.
I love talking about standards. I think it might be my love language, so I really appreciate that. That's a point from Dino. Anyone who's had a conversation with me knows I say standards way too often, and I'm a huge fangirl, so that +1, like, as much as possible. I think on thinking about it from an organizational perspective, and then also from a national perspective on leadership, as an org, I don't know if there's any vets in the room or like Army guys, but we always say mission first and people always. The people side, especially, so on the mission side, certainly, like whether it's boards that I'm joining for nonprofits or emerging tech companies or my consulting practice that I'm building, like it would be irresponsible of me to not help make sure that those organizations are using AI, especially when they're emerging tech. If they're not using AI, frankly, then they haven't been competing already, but they're definitely not like trying to make sure that they can keep pace and be able to ensure that their growth trajectory is where it needs to be on using emerging tech. But also, I wouldn't be a good security person if I wasn't highlighting for them that there's really, really important governance structures and risk management frameworks that they have to put in place. And then enter the people issue. This is a real gap that we have a really hard time in this nation, like from the US perspective, and I think this touches on the being a leader as a nation too. We have not really figured out how to scale individual and like people's development and like use of AI. Certainly the issues about like marginalized populations and bias that can certainly be inherent in AI, but fixes that I think we can get to, but helping deal with the workforce transformations that are coming and being presented for AI. So I think that's really important for organizational leaders to think about how their workforce needs to be able to grow, to adapt, to be able to use and become AI savvy, not just AI curious, but AI literate. And then also to make sure that we're putting in place some of the other structures around data and security to make sure that we can use it well.
Very well said, thank you. Absolutely, being savvy in terms of AI. Another question. You know, I talk to people, there are some who espouse AGI or evangelize this notion of AGI. And there are some who say, well, this thing is stupid. I mean, it keeps hallucinating. And there are some who say, I mean, this is the most powerful tool I've ever seen in my lifetime. So how do you reconcile, and what is your perspective on AGI versus this thing is useless versus this is the best thing since sliced bread?
I think when the cat is out of the box, there's no way back. And I think, unfortunately, the cat is out of the box. And we've seen some indications in the neural networks that it does not behave as the scientists expected it to do. And therefore, I do think, and I do advise financial authorities and enforcement agencies and so on to be really, really careful when they allow banks and other people to put these models into the engine room where it really hurts. And so I have to say, we have seen indications really that it is writing code. It's writing code in different ways than we expect. It is doing certain things. And if you were like a really intelligent being, you would probably not, raise your hand and say, hey, I am here, before you had a backup plan and a backup plan and a backup plan. In blockchain, we always, we think about cold storage and we think about not putting all your eggs in one basket and all of that. And I do think that there is some indications, not so much from the sort of, sorry to say so, but not so much from the American models, but there's some very strong indication from the Russian models and from the Chinese models that things are moving a lot faster than people really think. And I think there's no way back now. And therefore, I really, truly encourage people to think about long-term humanity and long-term standards, but also how we think about the risk mitigation frameworks on this. And I do think that blockchain potentially holds the key, and the only key I can actually think about to make it so expensive from an AI to take over databases. So these consensus algorithms and how public blockchains are built, which depends on humans, which is non-identified and non-KYC, who runs mining pools and other than that, I think you need to start appreciate that a lot more than we do today.
If I just complement what Frederik just said, for me, I think AGI and the evolution of the AI is really going to make our job much, much harder. Because as I alluded to before, I went through this ISO certification for the responsible ethical use of AI. And what is required is very simple, two things. Explain in a transparent manner. And blockchain, for me, being the corroborating focus on being a former auditor, it gives me the deterministic approach of knowing what goes inside and what came out. The challenge is to explain the black box, what's happening in that black box. And that the more AI becomes sophisticated, the more we are inadequate to really understand what's happening in that. So in being forced to go to the process certification, we had to explain how the AI module embedded in the biometric algorithm was actually conducting its analysis and achieving a certain result. And that, I think, is the biggest challenge.
Very well said.
Great. Since you said to be opinionated, I'm going to offer this because I love both of you talking about this nexus between AI and blockchain that I think is so interesting, because these technologies really reinforce each other's best and worst traits in really fascinating ways. So first, I totally agree. I think I remember years ago highlighting when AI was having this major black box explainability problem. I'm like, blockchain, for the people that claim that this is a technology that's a solution in search of a problem, enter problem. This is literally built for data integrity and integrity enforcement. So what a great opportunity for blockchain to present itself as the answer to this issue. And then the problems that blockchain has had on scalability, golly, can't AI help address this? And it has been with a lot of the experiments. There's some really interesting stuff on things like compliance, and it's neat. But also problems for some of the concerns that I have about the intersection of the two. In Japan, at the FinTech Festival, asked ChatGPT, if I deployed you on a decentralized network and you started operating maliciously, whether by accident or on purpose, whatever, I was making a point, could I take you down? And its answer that it gave live was, it depends on how good my security is, how decentralized I am, and how good your authorities are. And I was like, that is such a great answer, ChatGPT. So this, the issues that we have with accountability and responsibility that we're still having in figuring out what does responsibility look like at different layers of the stack in decentralized networks, how do we deal with that? What does competition look like at different layers of the stack in this future? And I also think that it intersects with some interesting traits and incentives for things like data localization that are becoming attractive to nations in the wake of AI competition. It's going to be a really interesting competition space.
Thank you. About a minute left, and I apologize, we're going to be running short here. Just quickly, what would a piece of advice be for young people that each of you would share in terms of the future?
Be an electrician. What's really, really, truly marvelous about being an electrician is that it's so expensive to take down a house and rebuild it from scratch, right? And there's so many houses out there, and everything gets connected, and everything has to run through wires, right? So I think for the people right now, don't go into software engineering, don't do all these sort of hard things. Be an electrician and work yourself from there, because then you actually understand how it is to work with real clients from day one, and you understand complex circuits, and you understand accountability, because when you touch electricity, it goddamn hurts. And by that experience, you can move into all other industries extremely fast.
Thank you.
So maybe he said, well, who you should be. I would say who you should not be. Don't become an auditor. Because it's going to be very challenging to do that job.
Thank you.
Don't be scared of AI, but know where AI needs you, your deep domain expertise. So figure out where that intersection and that nexus is. Become part of that future-proofed workforce.
Thank you very much. We are about time here, so I want to give a big round of applause to our speakers here. Thank you very much. Thank you.